The Galaxy Troops, a distinguished coalition of the most sophisticated species in the universe, congregated around their grandeur, the strategy table. They had dominated innumerable realms, each more formidable than previously. They have recently altered their focus on a small azure planet at the periphery of the galaxy. Earth, to them, Earth was an inconsequential backwater world with rudimentary technology and minimal value. Their attention was drawn to its thick jungles and extensive rainforests. However, such matters were inconsequential to an army as formidable as theirs, the commanding leader. A formidable presence with scaled armor struck a claw against the holographic map depicting Earth's rotation. In days, their cities will collapse effortlessly and their populace will capitulate as the others precede them. The commanders nodded in complacent agreement. Grins extending across their faces, they perceived no difficulty in this mission. Towns illuminated by radiant lights were the evident objectives regarding the remainder. Forests, deserts, and mountains existed. There is no need for them to be concerned about what threat might a forest present to a military force that possessed armaments capable of obliterating a youthful junior officer from various continents and enthusiastic to make an impression, ventured to inquire whether we do not regard the planet's wilderness. I have read that its terrains are. His comment was regarded with unpredictability. What actions can plants and animals perform? These humans conceal themselves from us. Natural environments, due to their not strong to confront us directly. The officer promptly became silent, feeling ashamed. Based on the response of his superiors, they all concurred that Earth was correct. Available for acquisition, and its rudimentary nature ecosystems would be a trivial annotation in the invasion commenced with their conquest. The complete might of the galactic military, their vessels fell through the atmosphere akin to a tempest, casting elongated shadows. Shadows cast across the major urban centers on Earth. Energy beams sliced through structures and colossal extraterrestrial constructs traversed the streets, their weapons disintegrating anything obstructing their path. The humans lacked opportunity for their defense forces to disintegrate within hours. The announcement of Earth's capitulation appeared unavoidable, and the galactic commanders indulged in their success. The city lay in ruins and the individuals escaped in terror. The Earth was feeble, as they had anticipated, yet something indicated in the peripheries of their triumph. Many humanity have vanished into the rainforests, evading urbanization devastation. The commander dismissed this development allows them to operate a single commander. Mocked that they will either starve or affect the wildlife will address them. There is no necessity to expend resources pursuing them. They concentrated their attention on trees and mud. Establishing dominance over the urban areas assured that any further resistance in the wilderness would deteriorate independently. In the forthcoming days, the extraterrestrial forces persisted in their advance, encountering minimal resistance to them. The job has already been accomplished by the patrols sent near the forest revealed no findings. The galactic commanders observed the interest, dismissing their lush expanses as irrelevant. Vessels ascended over the treetops, conducting surveillance for indications of life, although all they observed was the rainforests were unbroken jungles, obscure and damp, teeming with unidentified entities. However, they presented little danger to an army as powerful as theirs. At least that is what they were convinced as they fortified their grasp on Earth. The cosmic forces commenced to establish a routine for their military. Unperturbed, assured that their employment was, they observed the cities incinerate, virtually finished, and commended themselves for yet another. They achieved a swift and decisive victory without incurring any costs. Contemplate the forests where shadows moved and vanished beneath the concealment of dense canopies. Concealed beneath that, the jungle lay in hushed anticipation. Animated by purpose, the individuals who possessed those who fled into the woodlands were not vanquished. There existed survivors proficient in the craft of forbearance and cunning. These woodlands was their residence, and they were familiar with every detail. So the terrain in which they were not engaged in combat utilizing sophisticated technological weaponry, they were contending with the soil itself. They had disappeared into the depths when no scanner was able to reach them. Planning for a counteroffensive, galactic forces could never possess. Expected at the command center, the hubris of the galactic commanders. We should progress to the next stage. Another planet is forthcoming, as proposed by one commander. Reclining in his chair, there is no justification for being here any longer than their reports indicated. No signs of necessity. Of minimal organized resistance, dispersed clusters of humanity in the woodlands perceived no danger from the individuals they had transported into the rainforests were wilderness to them. Merely a concealment for the feeble and vanquished, yet those who had escaped, those in the woods, were far from feeble. They were preparing Anticipating the ideal chance to strike back, the galactic forces, crippled by their own arrogance, was unaware of what was approaching. Earth's forest, once regarded as insignificant, were on the verge of transforming into a battleground unlike any challenge the aliens have before encountered. The early days of the invasion were characterized solely by triumphs, for the galactic forces advanced across Earth's cities, are effortlessly obliterated. Opposition wherever encountered humanity appeared impotent to halt them. Soldiers stood erect, reveling in their rapid success, affirmed the conflict. The jungle was nearly their demise. Simply a backdrop, an expanse of verdure that possessed little strategic significance. Their scanners exhibited no substantial progress in that regard, merely thick vegetation and sporadic animal. Nevertheless, a transformation occurred. Patrols around the forest commenced. Initially disregarded as lacking equipment malfunction or natural disasters, the jungle became a perilous environment thereafter, teeming with unfamiliar fauna and perilous landscape. Nonetheless, as additional units disappeared without a trace, the commanders commenced acknowledging reports that were received regarding soldiers perceiving unusual sounds and shadows. It appeared to shift among the trees in assaults that resulted in no survivors. The forest, previously overlooked, was abruptly collaborating with an invisible adversary. An elite, the squad, was dispatched to investigate their armor radiating under the sunlight as they advanced with assurance into the rain. They were outfitted with the most in the forest. The amazing technology possessed by the galaxy provides scanners proficient in identifying even the most minimal mobility weapons that capable of penetrating solid rock. Yet none of their disappearance was significant. Akin to panic began to ensue among the others. Leaders who previously mocked the contemplation of vast wilderness presenting the threat was now compelled to be recognized. The escalating issue of the jungle was consuming their forces individually, and the most unfortunate aspect was their complete ignorance of how their technology was ineffective. Drones were unable to penetrate the dense canopy, and its thermal sensors detected only the surrounding warmth of the trees. It seemed as though the assailants were apparitions attacking unexpectedly and disappearing before anyone could respond. Galactic powers were employed to initiate an opening. Battlefields where their superior firepower and numerical superiority might readily overpower any opposition. Nonetheless, the advantages of the jungle were inconsequential to me. The thick underbrush impeded their progress. The towering trees obstructed their line of sight. Visual stimuli and the incessant auditory sensations of the forest obstructed their access. An invisible adversary accompanied each movement they made, akin to entering a snare, and in reality they were the humans who had adapted to those. Those who sought refuge in the jungles were not only concealing their preparations, understood that in direct confrontation they had no opportunity. Versus the galactic forces, they utilized the resources available in their environment. The jungles became their instrument. Construct traps utilizing the natural environment, soldiers would advance to their advantage into an ostensibly vacant clearing solely to discover themselves ensnared in trenches filled. Others were selected with sharper stakes. Disturbed by silent silhouettes among the trees, arrows and knives delivering lethal blows, accuracy prior to reversion into the shadows for which the aliens were unprepared. Particular type of combat for which they had been trained, concentrated on extensive military engagements, superior firepower, and advanced technology superiority. They had never experienced an adversary who engaged in this manner, who possessed an intimate knowledge of the terrain, had the ability to vanish at will. Significant territory opposed to them. Initially, the moment the galactic troops experienced fear, they were no longer the predators, they were the prey. Returned to their command base, the extraterrestrial leaders hastily convened to formulate perception of the circumstances. They communicated an increase in the number of patrols, believing that such tremendous force would conquer whatever was concealed in the trees. Regardless of their quantity, the jungle engulfed them all. Humans did not engage in direct combat, they launched attacks from the shadows, assaulting at nocturnal hours, utilizing the veil of night and the forest's bewilderment to their benefit. And whenever they attacked, the galactic forces suffered a greater loss of personnel. Frustration escalated among the commanders. Their technology that had consistently provided the advantage was proving ineffective. Their weapons were too massive and sluggish. For the thick underbrush their armor engineered for intense warfare rendered them awkward and susceptible in the confined trails of the forest. Regardless of the circumstances, they frequently scanned the area, discovered nothing. The humans were apparitions, imperceptible and lethal. The leaders started to comprehend the seriousness of they had miscalculated Earth's significance. Furthermore, they possessed undervalued its populace. These individuals were not the feeble, primitive beings they had presumed. They were combatants, ingenious and resolute. Currently in the rainforest that was being depicted, the perilous nature of galactic forces and other squads disappeared. Desperate extraterrestrial forces attempted igniting the woodlands with the belief they could incinerate their adversaries nonetheless. The humans consistently maintained a strategic advantage. They expected the relocation setting. Conduct-controlled burns to redirect the infernos engulf the expansive and tenacious forest. Could not be easily destroyed. As though the soil itself was persisting in withholding its secrets at this juncture, the formerly haughty galactic troops were apprehensive of every stir in the foliage. Each remote vocalization of an animal transmitted they descended into a frenzy and ceased marching. They entered the jungle with confidence paused, aware that at any instant death may emerge unexpectedly from the shadows. The rainforest has transformed into a horror. Location where technology and power coexisted insignificant, and the individuals who possessed previously regarded as prey have transformed into the galactic commanders were hunters. Remained with an option to persist in deploying their forces into the forest with awareness, because it signified inevitable demise or withdrawal, and concede that they had been vanquished by a planet they had previously derided, but retreat was not yet an option for them. Would persist in the struggle, albeit internally they recognized that the tide had shifted on Earth. Rainforests, the location they had previously occupied, the laughter directed at them, had led to their downfall, and the forest phantoms, as they were currently manifesting the called, were far from complete. The cosmic powers had miscalculated Earth's capabilities. In every conceivable manner, their conviction in the preeminence of their technology had obscured their perception of the genuine challenge prior to them. The phantoms of the jungle had not merely endured the initial assault, they had emerged as a formidable entity. As other extraterrestrial forces vanished into it, became evident that the rainforests, this was no longer a mere campaign. What was intended to be a rapid invasion had transformed into a protracted conflict, that the cosmic forces were absent prepared for what the aliens were accustomed to, overpowering their adversaries by sheer their advanced weaponry, has always been powered by afforded them an advantage in direct confrontation, yet, within the impenetrable, resilient jungle their advantage was diminishing. Heavy armor impeded their movement. Advanced scanners were unable to detect the human combatants concealed within the foliage. Their armaments, engineered for extensive deployment demolition, was excessively cumbersome for the close-quarters battle in the jungle. Simultaneously, insisted the phantoms of the jungle flourished. They were familiar with every detail of the topography, each concealed route, every natural feature, obstacle that may be transformed into a benefit. They did not engage in combat like the galactic forces anticipated, but they did not confront their adversary directly. Instead, they employed guerrilla tactics by executing rapid strikes and vanishing prior to the aliens' arrival. Their armaments consisted solely of basic knives, bows, and traps. However, they were situated in the bush. More efficacious than any modern, the pivotal moment in technology occurred when the jungle phantoms executed a synchronized series of assaults on the extraterrestrial provisions lines. Devoid of their supply drops, galactic soldiers were isolated and stranded. From their assets and reinforcements of the rainforests, previously deemed trivial, had now transformed the precise element that could vanquish them. Lacking the capacity to introduce new troops or supplies, of the galactic commanders were compelled to reevaluate their strategy. Yet, every endeavor to recover management of the situation deteriorated over the night. The jungles thrived with the sound of ambushes by extraterrestrial soldiers on edge. Encountered an assault from they indiscriminately discharged their weapons from all directions into the despite the darkness. The jungle proved unyielding. Ghosts were imperceptible in their motions, obscured by the sounds of the jungle. Extraterrestrials had never encountered an adversary akin to this method that did not depend on brute force, yet on astuteness and perseverance. The fighters possessed a distinct advantage. Could adapt, as they were not limited by what technology or protocol did they employ. They possessed, and more significantly, they utilized the jungle transformed into their environment. Their ally provides both security and a method of assault on every vine and every tree. Each expanse of dense underbrush constituted an instrument in their repertoire, and as the galactic armies overwhelmed the humans, become more audacious, the success of the jungle ghost commenced to disseminate not solely among humans, survive within the extraterrestrial forces. As fear began to take hold of the alien soldiers, ceased to enter the forests, enthusiastically embrace any mission. The forest was perceived as a fatal sentence. Commanders endeavored to impose discipline. However, even they could not refute the increasing. The rainforest has transformed into a source of foreboding, a realm of terrors, and the wilderness, the apparitions, represented the manifestations of their worries. Desperation manifested into reality. Cosmic forces, to intensify their tactics, they employed their utmost sophisticated reconnaissance drones, aiming to ultimately identify the human combatants and terminate the ambushes. Nonetheless, The jungle was not merely a battleground, it was the drones were swiftly lost while alive. Sensors overwhelmed by the dense canopy, along with the persistent disruption from all the leaders who had previously ridiculed our natural habitats, currently were at a loss. They possessed no strategy to combat this adversary, the jungle. Conversely, ghosts had no hesitation. They exploited their advantage by initiating an offensive. Increased frequency of assaults and the targeting of critical entities, alien outpost positions where compromised communication channels were disrupted, and morale deteriorated. The aliens, previously so confident of their dominance, were now engaged in combat. Each day presented additional challenges for survival. Casualties increased daily, resulting in greater losses. The forest ghosts become more powerful than Ian. Commanders were presented with limited alternatives. They had undervalued the resilience. Considering Earth's inhabitants and the obstacles of its wilderness, their formerly unassailable confidence was supplanted by frustration, and dread had generated a wave. Subsequent influx of military personnel into the rainforests, and on each occasion, they had been the jungle spirits encountered failure transformed the wilderness into their stronghold, and the extraterrestrials had no means to penetrate it. It was evident that the galactic forces were no longer in control of the conflict, which they had anticipated concluding within days. Prolonged for weeks, and with each passing day, their position deteriorated further. Desperate provisions were dwindling. The troops were disheartened, and their technology that had consistently been theirs maximum strength was rendered ineffective in the visage of Earth's natural fortifications. Cosmic commanders, once exceedingly arrogant, and indeed, a triumph is now commencing. Inquire about their potential to prevail in this conflict. All the forest phantoms had transformed the progression of the invasion that had commenced an ostensibly simple conquest has transformed into a struggle for existence, and as the galactic forces continued to decline, humans were formerly perceived as feeble and primitive were demonstrating significantly greater peril than anyone possessed anticipated. That the tide has officially transformed. The once formidable galactic powers, the dominant, were now on the defensive. The numbers have been consistently decreasing, as an increasing number of soldiers succumbed to the unyielding ambushes of the jungle. The rainforests have been changed by ghosts into a combat zone that favored the humans at every juncture. For every extraterrestrial, the patrol that ventured with fewer members returned. The commanders ceased their planning activities. They were concentrated on their subsequent conquest. Only on survival, the jungle apparitions exhibited no compassion. They had acquired the adversary's tendencies and vulnerabilities. Their overdependence on technology did not require advanced weaponry or the sophisticated armor. They required solely through the bush, and with their own determination, they advanced, stealthily attacking from the obscurity, vanishing before the cosmic forces could respond. But they did not participate in extended conflicts, had a singular objective. Weaken and retreat from the foreign commanders, became progressively exasperated. They have never faced an adversary that engaged in combat. The techniques employed by the humans were completely unacquainted, and their unpredictability rendered it infeasible to establish an adequate defense, regardless of the circumstances. Numerous reinforcements they dispatched in the bush. The outcome was invariably identical. Chaos, uncertainty, and demise are their advancements. Armaments that have proven highly effective in open combat were ineffective in the congested environment. Unyielding terrain for their forces was diminished to apprehensive silhouettes of their previous identities, reacting to every noise, aware that at any instant and invisible the assailant could terminate their existence. Psychological impact on the extraterrestrial forces was huge. They were no longer the fearless warriors, as they once were when upon their initial arrival on Earth. They formerly marched with assurance, but now each step resembled entering a snare. Their nerves were frayed and discipline was commencing to disintegrate. Soldiers rejected directives to penetrate the jungle, recognizing it signified inevitable demise. Even the elite units prepared to confront the most formidable adversaries were reluctant to confront the spectral entities of the jungle. The alien leaders attempted to seize the command center. To devise new techniques, however, the strategy appeared destined for failure. Rainforests were too expansive and dense. Excessively antagonistic, its technology, which possessed, has consistently been their advantage. Ineffectual, they were unable to obtain a lucid comprehension of the terrain, and their efforts to monitor the human combatants encountered successive failures. The woods was inaccessible, and the humans understood it more profoundly than anyone else, as the extraterrestrial weakened forces transformed the forest into phantoms. More aggressive, they were not merely protecting their residents, they were expelling the enemy. Attacks intensified in both frequency and severity. Critical extraterrestrial outposts and logistical routes, galactic forces were being strained, compelled to disperse in an endeavor to maintain their position. but this merely resulted in they were rendered more susceptible to the jungle's knowledge. Just where to impact, and with each the ambush was successful, the aliens suffered greater losses. Regarding their capacity to retaliate, it was not the mere bodily toll that was exhausting the aliens subdued. It was the psychological aspect. Fortitude they had never envisioned that Earth, a planet they had previously regarded trivial, would be the observation of their downfall stemmed from their disdain of the concept that a forest may be a danger to their extensively trained and well-equipped forces, but the very terrain they had defeated them in the jungle. However, the ghosts remained relentless. Comprehended that the sole method to genuinely the objective was to expel the extraterrestrials. This was not solely about survival, has transitioned to a matter of reclamation. Its environment, the rainforest, had transformed into an emblem of Earth's tenacity, and the humanity were resolute in ensuring the aliens never forgot. Each assault was a declaration that Earth shall not be subjugated. The cosmic commanders were depleting their resources. The resources available to them were limited, decreasing, and their forces were. The woods had become exhausting cemetery for their warriors, and there being no foreseeable conclusion to the assaults, they was unable to combat the humans in the rainforests, and they were unable to adapt to the battle style of the jungle phantoms had mastered. It became evident that they were relinquishing power over the humans. Resilience had assumed control of the cosmic troops. Unexpectedly, they had believed Earth would descend like all other celestial bodies they possessed, subjugated, yet these individuals, where they persevered despite the differences, refused to capitulate, and is now in the abyss of the rainforest they were demonstrating to be the most formidable adversary of the galactic armies. What commenced as a mere invasion had transformed into a conflict that the extraterrestrials they were confident in their ability to dominate. The jungle ghosts were unyielding in their accomplishment, ignited a conflagration among Earth's residual forces of humanity worldwide, begun to rally motivated by the triumphs in the rainforest. The extraterrestrial forces were losing not just their position in the jungle, as well as their influence over the remainder of the planet, which once appeared an inexorable invasion was now descending. Excluding Earth's defenders, who had been so on the verge of loss, were suddenly regaining the advantage had by the galactic commanders, has consistently held the belief that technology and firepower would ensure their triumph. Ultimately, it was human adaptability, resilience, and familiarity with their environment that had altered the course of the rainforests, which had been regarded as merely a hindrance, had transformed into the essential element for the jungle spirits to defend the Earth. Imperceptible combatants who were formerly derided as mere surviving had transformed into the emblem of humanity's resilience and power. Galactic troops, despite their immense power, were starting to comprehend that they may not depart Earth unscathed from the cosmic powers were on the verge of collapse. Once appeared to be a guaranteed victory transformed into a frantic endeavor for survival of the alien leaders who had previously articulated with conviction the act of obliteration. Earth's defenses are presently situated, enveloped on all sides by the rainforest. Something they had undervalued had transformed the core of their demise. Their forces' supplies were spread, and diminished morale had reached its worst in the jungle, had attained legendary status among both humans and aliens. Share a name once murmured in trepidation by the extraterrestrial soldiers was now articulated with reverence by Earth's defenders. Were no longer merely a group of survivors. They were the impetus, the driving force behind humanity's resistance strategies. Honed through months of combat in the jungle, had summoned the formidable galactic forces, subdued nonetheless the losses incurred by the galactic leaders, unwilling to concede defeat. They initiated a final effort to collect the remnants of their elite forces and commanding them into the core of the jungle. Their strategy was easily overrun by the jungle phantoms through overwhelming numbers and firepower. Yet as prior to the rainforests, opposing the thick foliage and erratic terrain impeded their progress to a crawl, and their substantial the machinery was ineffective in the confined space routes of the jungle. The specters of the wilderness, recognizing that this would be the aliens' final occurrence, be adequately prepared. They lacked no resources. Objective of convening with the galactic forces instead, they established traps and ambushes, and utilized the Earth itself to erode their adversaries, the extraterrestrials. Endeavored to traverse the jungle while avoiding pitfalls, becoming ensnared by traps and being eliminated individually by the forest itself. Appeared to collude against the invaders. Their sophisticated weaponry that could the destruction of cities was ineffectual here. The dense woods and underbrush absorbed their diminished firepower, renders them susceptible to the hushed assaults of the jungle phantoms. As the temporal entities the extraterrestrial powers became increasingly desperate as they fled. Depleted of time and soldiers depleting hope, The ultimate effort was they were aware of their failure in the bush. Spirits never afforded them a moment to reorganize or recuperate each time the extraterrestrials attempted to secure a foothold. Their communications were impeded, isolated, and their leaders were abandoned, disconnected. Unable of coordinating, their panic ensued among the alien soldiers. Formerly assured of their dominance, currently in complete withdrawal. Although the jungle was no avenue for escape, every route culminated in each clearing transformed into yet another trap. The jungle spirits advanced in battle. Their advantages on striking without mercy, the galactic forces diminished to a dispersed state. Factions of opposition were contending for the arrogant alien army that governs their life. Had formerly been the scourge of the galaxy, the decisive blow has now been delivered, resulting in a break from a significant conflict, but from the aliens could no longer endure. Weariness, maintain their supplies had been depleted. Weapons malfunctioned amid the damp bush. The air and their forces were also disheartened to persist in the struggle. Jungle phantoms, unyielding in the pursuit, afforded them no opportunity for escape. The extraterrestrials were eliminated individually. Ultimately, only a few individuals persisted escape the planet aboard their vessels departing from Earth's orbit. They had arrived to conquer but departed in disgrace. The formerly formidable galactic troops was defeated not by superior technology or increased quantities, but by the ingenuity and resilience of Earth. Defenders of the jungle that they possessed, derided, had transformed into their cemetery. Upon returning to the ground, the triumph was eliminate. The final alien invaders had been expelled, and Earth was liberated. Liberate the phantoms of the jungle that materialized from the forests, triumphant yet fatigued. They had struggled not merely for existence but for their residence. The jungle, encompassing all their hazards and obstacles, had been present, the major ally in the conflict, and now they served as a monument to the resilience of the human spirit. On Earth was no longer the same. The aliens possessed a feeble, primitive planet, considered it to be demonstrated by its populace themselves in the most arduous of circumstances, overcoming an adversary that possessed conquered numerous cosmic worlds. Powers that had previously governed the stars had humbled by a world they formerly rejected, and the forest specters, the unseen combatants who have altered the course of the invasion, has now become legendary. In the aftermath, the inhabitants of Earth proceeded to reconstruct the cities that had been the lost elements. Were gradually restored. Survivors emerged from the forests and mountains where they had concealed themselves. Nevertheless, the memory of the jungle apparitions persisted. Their strategies, their bravery, and the reluctance to capitulate had preserved the globe. They had demonstrated that even in the face of insurmountable challenges, humanity the galactic forces would remain resolute. Always remember the teachings of Earth. The jungle that appeared as an inconvenience has transformed into a battleground, fundamentally altered the trajectory of the conflict, and the forest phantoms, with their unparalleled skill and perseverance, had demonstrated the galaxy that Earth should not be underestimated. The rainforests were more than the end, merely a battleground setting, emblem of Earth's resilience and capacity to acclimate and endure. The phantoms of the jungle transformed the jungle into their weapon, and therefore they had preserved the galactic powers had acquired knowledge about the world. The arduous manner that no quantity of technology may surpass the essence of individuals familiar with their territory and engaged in combat with all that they possessed. Earth, once dismissed, has secured its position among the celestial bodies.